1973, the Yom Kippur War. Egyptian and Syrian forces had broken through Israeli defenses and were pushing deep into Israeli territory. The situation was so dire that Israel's Prime Minister Golda Meir made one phone call to America, and within 48 hours, the United States airlifted so many weapons and supplies that Israel survived. That was the deal. That was the unspoken agreement that defined the Middle East for over 50 years. Every major war Israel fought, America was somewhere in the background, funding it, arming it, vetoing UN resolutions against it, shielding it diplomatically. The relationship was so deep, so embedded, that many analysts stopped treating Israel and America as two separate foreign policy actors and started treating them as one. But here we are, 2026, and that equation has shifted away fully expect America went on. Billions lost, watched oil prices explode past $100 a barrel, and then stepped back. The ceasefire came not on American terms, it came on Iran's terms. 10 points, Iran's demands. And the most important thing nobody is saying out loud right now is this: America told Israel, enough. So the question every geopolitical analyst, every foreign policy strategist, and frankly every person watching the Middle East right now needs to answer is this: what happens to Israel when America's shadow moves? That is what this video is about. And I'm going to walk through it carefully because history matters here. Because you cannot understand today without understanding how we got here. And you cannot understand where this goes without understanding both. Let's get into it. First, let's clear something up. A lot of people are saying the war is over. I'm telling you it's not. What ended was a chapter. The conflict itself has simply shifted form. Think about what Iran actually demanded in its 10-point ceasefire proposal. Israel cannot strike Lebanon. Hezbollah receives protection. No further military action against the Houthis. Did Israel agree to those terms? No. Within hours of the ceasefire announcement, Netanyahu publicly stated that operations against Hezbollah in Lebanon would continue, that Israel was not bound by what America negotiated. Let that sink in for a second. A nation is openly defying the terms its most powerful ally just agreed to on its behalf. Is that even possible? Can a country just reject an agreement made by the very partner propping it up? Yes, and understanding why tells you everything about where this is headed. What does Israel actually want? Pull up a map. Israel is a small country surrounded by adversaries: Lebanon and Hezbollah to the north, Syria to the east, Gaza and Hamas to the south, and Iran further out, funding, arming, and directing all of it. Israeli military strategists have argued for decades that the only sustainable path to security is buffer. Push the threat back, control the Litani River corridor in southern Lebanon, eliminate Hezbollah military force, maintain a buffer zone in Syria, remove Iran's ability to project power to Israel's doorstep. This is what gets called the Greater Israel concept in political circles, though Israeli security officials prefer to frame it in purely strategic terms rather than ideological ones. The core military doctrine is simple. If your enemy is far from your border, you are safe. If your enemy is at your border, you are always one mistake away from catastrophe. And right now, from Israel's perspective, this moment, with Iran weakened, Hezbollah degraded, Hamas nearly destroyed, this moment may be the best strategic window they have seen in decades, possibly ever. So when America says stop, Israel sees a choice between following orders and potentially never getting this opportunity again. That is why they are not stopping. But what are the actual costs of not stopping? This is where the math gets uncomfortable. Israel's military without American support, what does it actually look like? Active military personnel, approximately 170,000, with reserves, around 350,000 total, F-35 fighter jets, Iron Dome, Arrow missile defense, and an undeclared nuclear capability that Israel has never officially confirmed, but nobody seriously disputes. That sounds formidable, and it is for regional conflicts. But war is not just about weapons. War is sustained by economics. And this is where Israel's most serious vulnerability lives. Israel's annual defense budget runs around $24 billion. Since the Gaza conflict began, that number has been climbing fast. American military aid has historically added approximately $3.8 billion per year. On top of that, during active conflicts, significantly more. If America genuinely pulled back, reduced weapons transfers, cut financial support, how long can Israel sustain high-intensity operations on its own? Economists who study Israeli defense financing say not long. And the broader economic picture is already under strain. Foreign investment has declined, tourism collapsed, multiple credit rating agencies have downgraded Israel's sovereign debt rating. These are not minor signals. These are structural warnings. And here is the political dimension that matters most for American policymakers. A recent Pew Research survey found that more than 60% of American adults now hold unfavorable views of Israel. Among younger Americans, the numbers are even higher. That is not a number that stays static. That is a number that moves policy over time. Politicians respond to polling, and polling is shifting. So, is America actually abandoning Israel? This requires more nuance than the headline version suggests. The Israel lobby in Washington remains one of the most influential foreign policy forces in American politics. AIPAC spends enormous amounts every election cycle to shape congressional positions on Israel. That infrastructure does not dissolve overnight, but what is changing is America's strategic prioritization. The United States increasingly views China as its primary long-term competitor. The focus, military, economic, diplomatic, is shifting toward the Pacific. Sustained, deep entanglement in Middle East conflicts makes that pivot harder. Every billion spent in the Middle East is a billion not positioned for Indo-Pacific strategy. The Iran conflict made this calculus visible in real numbers. $30 billion in estimated costs over roughly 40 days of fighting. Oil above $100 a barrel. Gas prices at $5 per gallon in parts of the United States. Trump understood if this continued into midterm election territory, the political damage would be severe. So he stopped. But here is the critical distinction. Stopping is not abandoning. What it signals is a renegotiation of the relationship. Israel will still receive support, but with more conditions attached and with an expectation that Israel carries more of its own weight. Less unconditional backing, more transactional alignment. That is a meaningful shift. Even if it does not feel like one on the surface, Israel now has 3 paths forward. Only one of them is sustainable. Path 1, negotiate. Two-state solution, recognition of Palestinian statehood, withdrawal from contested territories, de-escalation with Lebanon. This path exists in theory. In practice, the current Israeli government cannot walk it. Netanyahu, Ben-Gvir, Smotrich, this coalition collapses the moment it moves to a genuine compromise. These are not politicians with room to negotiate. Their political survival depends on not negotiating. Path 2, fight alone. Continue military operations without full American backing. Fund it internally. Push through despite international pressure. This path is expensive, diplomatically isolating, and over the long term, economically unsustainable for a country Israel's size. History has not been kind to nations that outspend their economic foundations on military operations. Path 3, build a regional coalition. Deepen ties with Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain, expand the Abraham Accords. Position Iran as the shared threat that unites Israel with Sunni Arab states. Use that regional alignment to replace some of what America's unconditional support used to provide. This is the path Israeli strategists are actively pursuing, and there is real logic to it. But there is one wall in the way, and it is not going to move easily. Saudi Arabia has been direct. Normalization with Israel requires meaningful progress on the Palestinian question. No Palestinian resolution, no full normalization. And without Saudi Arabia, the regional coalition strategy is significantly weakened. Israel's current government cannot deliver what Saudi Arabia is asking for. So the third path is also partially blocked by the same political constraints that block the first. The question nobody is asking loudly enough. What do ordinary Israelis actually want? Because ultimately, that is what determines political outcomes. Israeli society right now is under enormous internal strain. Opposition leaders have publicly accused Netanyahu of leading the country toward catastrophe. Massive protests have erupted against the government. Hundreds of thousands of Israeli citizens have taken to the streets. And here is the detail that reveals more than any political speech. Before the Iran conflict escalated, over 1 million Israelis rushed to Ben Gurion Airport, not to fight, to leave. That image matters. Because national strength is not just measured in military hardware, it is measured in the willingness of a population to stay, to sacrifice, to endure. When a significant portion of a population's first instinct during a crisis is to find the next flight out, that is a data point about morale that no military budget can fix. Now, let's look at what this means from the other side of the equation. Iran lost a great deal in this conflict, infrastructure destroyed, senior leadership killed. The IRG significantly weakened, real, measurable damage. But Iran gained something that is harder to quantify and more strategically durable than anything it lost: credibility. America came with full military force alongside Israel and could not finish the job. That message traveled instantly across every government, every military command, every resistance movement in the region. The invincibility of American-Israeli military dominance, the assumption that had held the regional order together for decades, has a visible crack in it now. And that crack is Israel's most serious long-term problem. For decades, Israeli deterrence was built not just on military capability, but on the perception of invincibility. You cannot win against Israel. That belief prevented conflicts before they started. It made adversaries calculate differently. F-35s were damaged. Combined American and Israeli firepower could not bring Iran to its knees. That is now part of the historical record. Every actor in the region has updated their calculations accordingly. So where does this actually go? Short term, the next 6 months, expect continued Israeli military operations in Lebanon, sporadic Houthi activity, proxy skirmishes, but a return to full-scale direct conflict involving American forces is unlikely in this window. The political cost for Trump is too high. Medium term, 1 to 2 years. The most significant variable is Israeli domestic politics. If Netanyahu's coalition falls and the pressure on it is real and growing, a different Israeli government might approach the situation with different calculations. Not necessarily more conciliatory, but potentially more strategically coherent. Long term, the question that determines everything is whether the Palestinian issue gets resolved or whether it continues to fester as a wound that prevents every regional realignment from sticking. History consistently shows that populations fighting for self-determination in their own land are extraordinarily difficult to permanently suppress. That pattern does not favor the current trajectory. Here is the bottom line. America stepping back is not weakness. It is a strategic reallocation. The United States is repositioning its focus toward China and the Pacific. That is a rational choice given its long-term competitive priorities. Israel is now standing at a genuine crossroads. The path of maximum military force is available, but increasingly expensive, increasingly isolated, and increasingly disconnected from what even its primary ally is willing to sustain. History offers a consistent lesson. Nations that build their entire security architecture on military dominance alone, without political resolution of the underlying conflicts driving the violence, tend to find that dominance erodes faster than they expect. The question is whether Israel's leadership understands that. Whether the political will exists to make choices that are painful in the short term, but sustainable over time, or whether the current trajectory continues, buying tactical advantages while the strategic position quietly deteriorates. That answer will not come from Washington. It will come from within Israel itself, and it will come sooner than most people think. If this breakdown was useful, hit like and subscribe.